When it comes to mini ITX cases, there are some trying to find a good middle ground between size and compatibility. Others want to test the limits of size. And then there is Big Daddy Phanteks airflowing the shit out of your pocket size components. This episode is brought to you by CDKoffers.com. CDKoffers offers a wide variety of software or game keys for a fraction of the usual retail price. You can get your usual PC game codes or even library codes for things like Steam, Uplay and Origin. But the most important part for us are the software codes. Here we can get software activation codes for things like MS Office or Windows 10 for a ridiculously cheap price. And right now you can also use the promo code TS20 to get a 20% discount to make the already cheap Windows 10 license even cheaper. If you want to get that nasty activation message away, make sure to head down to the links in the description below and don't forget to use the promo code TS20 for a 20% discount. What we have here today is the Phanteks P200A D-RGB. ARGB, stop using your own names. From their Eclipse series. In total there are two different variations of this case, the D-ARGB version that I have here and a performance version with a metal side panel and some mesh cutout for airflow. Though, to jump a bit ahead, I don't believe that you actually need that. Anyway, let's go over the main features. Being a mini tower filling almost 30 liters, the P200A is only compatible with the mini ITX and mini DTX motherboard standard. But this does not apply for the PSU, as Phanteks went with a standard ATX sized, limited to 205mm long. Though you don't want to stretch that one, believe me. Inside the case, the power supply is mounted at the top onto this removable bracket. For the CPU cooling, the P200A allows for some pretty beefy CPU coolers that are up to 165mm high. On the GPU side, you can fit a up to 355mm long 3-slot GPU, so no issue for those big boy 3090s. In terms of drives, out of the box you can install up to 4 SSDs, 2 on the bracket behind the motherboard and 2 inside of these removable Phanteks covers. For 3.5-inch drives, you have the possibility to get up to 4 stackable brackets, which will be installed right in front of the front fans, though you would lose the 2.5-inch spots and pretty much block the front and side airflow. And please note that these are not included, you will need to get these separately. For the I/O, it is located in the front bottom of the case, where you will find 2 USB 3.0 Type A and 1 10GB USB Type C, as well as the usual mic and headphone jack. There are additional RGB buttons on here, but we will get to that in a minute. The power button is located at the top of the case with some RGB lights around it. And of course, a big ass tempered glass side panel. But before we go any further into this, let's just quickly put a system in here. Okay, so when I initially took the case out of the box, the very first thing that stood out is quality. Everything in here is made out of thick metal, nothing flexes, all of the buttons are clicky and not wobbly at all, and the feet are really big and really rigid. Instead of the usual side and screw-in system, Phanteks used a clip-in system for the panels, though you can still lock the back one in place. So in terms of first impressions, it's actually really good. Now, in the feature segment, I did not mention anything about fans or radiators because that's a Very complicated topic. Don't get me wrong, this thing can cool, but it is also extremely versatile, which directly impacts how much it can cool, so let's boil it down. Out of the box you will get two of these F120SK D-RGB fans. Each of them comes with some nice looking RGB, which is already provided by the built-in RGB controller. But instead of just slapping it in somewhere inside of the case, Phanteks built it in somewhere inside of the I/O panel. There you also have these two buttons that I already mentioned. The left one which controls the modes and the right one which controls the color. On a side note, long pressing the left one shuts everything off, while long pressing the right one resets the color to rainbow unicorn poop. If you want to go with mainboard control, you can. Phanteks provides you with a 3-pin ARGB plug which comes out of the I/O panel. Just don't forget that there is a SATA power plug that needs to be hooked up to the PSU. Additionally, there is a daisy chain plug that is also sticking out. To my very surprise, Phanteks makes this daisy chainable to other proprietary Phanteks devices as well as anything else using a 3-pin RGB plug. Very thoughtful. Okay, so out of the box, you will get these two fans already pre-mounted as well as the spot in the back. Though I have to note that because the PSU is located at the top, they push the back fan spot down so much that it actually starts to act like a CPU cooler fan. Just look at how squished that is. Of course that will depend on the cooler you use, but damn. So even if included fans are a nice thing, they still need to be good. So we tested them. As part of our usual case test, we used our 3700X locked at 4.2 GHz with the Be Quiet Dark Rock Pro 4 on top without any fans to amplify the results. Then we installed one P12 in the back and left the two front fans as they were and hit the CPU with heavy load. This left us at 58 degrees C. Then we replaced both front fans with two P12s, which surprisingly had the exact same result. So we need to take this whole test with a grain of salt because the back fan spot is so much squished to the Dark Rock Pro that it kinda is the CPU fan now. And for case testing, I do not use any CPU fans cause that amplifies the results, which in this case it kinda doesn't, but amplified or not, the results are still very much true. Replacing the original fans with P12s did not change anything. So these included fans are at least good to begin with. That being said, this would also mean that it would be extremely unfair to include this case in our usual benchmark list, as it looks like it outperforms every case by a margin. And don't get me wrong, the airflow is really good, but the placement of the back fan spot just makes it look even better. But let's quickly talk about the front. First off, I want to say that the imagery on Phanteks' website does not do justice about how it actually looks. It may seem like it resembles an old speaker from the 2000 era, but once it's on the table, it actually looks clean, high quality, and just generally pretty good with a RGB fan behind it. That being said, Phanteks also used words like ultra, fine, performance, mesh and all, which immediately triggered my bullshit detectors. But no, repeating the same test revealed that without the front, the temps fell down by just 1 degree C, which is really not a lot, and which also means that the front panel is very much air pass-through-y. But if that wasn't enough, Phanteks upped it up another notch because the spots where the SSDs could go are also doubling as two fan spots. This is why there is the same mesh material on the backside. And if that still wasn't enough, there is space for another two fans in the bottom of the case, with a slidable dust filter, though you have to remove the front cover. So in total, we are looking at 7 fan spots, 2 120s or 140s in the front, 2 120s in the bottom, 2 120s on the side and 1 120 on the back. That's a lot of fans for such a small case. And if you prefer water, no problem, you can mount a up to 280 in the front, a 240 on the side and a 120 in the back. So from a cooling standpoint, this is top notch. And this would even be top notch for a mid tower, but this is small. But I still wanted to create some relatable numbers, so we used our 10700K pad with a 2080 Super and a NZXT Kraken X53. Then we left the two original fans in the front, installed the water cooler on the side and a P12 in the back. After a good 30 minutes run of heavy load and firm arc, the CPU was at 65 degrees C, while the GPU was at 72. And to put this into context, a spec'd out Cooling Rocket Heavy, though without any extra fans, cause there is no space, was around 10 to 15 degrees higher. Even if this comparison is as unstandardized as it gets, my point is proven, this thing can really cool. The next important thing that I wanted to talk about is the building process. It was hard. The first enjoyable moment came because of the edge that is created because the motherboard is slightly pressed in. Because of this, you need to install the motherboard at a slight angle. But if you're dumb enough to switch the motherboard after the back fan is already installed, you do not have that angle. And let's just say it gets scratched pretty easily. Just keep that in mind. But that wasn't a real problem. The only real trouble came because of cable management. Don't get me wrong, Phanteks did what they could. You have cable cutters where you need them, you have straps, you have prepared guiding rails, and you even have this surprisingly rigid metal cable holders. But the space behind everything is simply slim to none, so you definitely need to plan ahead on this one. You will just not be able to cram your SATA plug somewhere because there is no somewhere. And just please don't be like me, use a fully modular power supply. I made this way harder than it should have been. But other than that, the installation was pretty easy, though I find it pretty funny that Phanteks built in a instant bad cable management polishing system. Nope, that won't close if you messed up. On this quick side note, Phanteks includes a vertical GPU installation bracket. The installation for that is pretty straightforward. You need to unmount the center of the back fan and the PCIe brackets and then just rotate everything around. And then the included bracket can be installed on the bottom with the included thumb screws. Though keep in mind that you will lose the back fan spot, one of the bottom fan spots, and you need to bring your own PCIe riser. Okay, that was a lot, so let's recap the case. Impressive cooling compatibility, slim to none air restriction by the panels, full-size triple-slot GPUs, which can be installed vertically, a mini ITX case that can fit a Darkrock Pro 4, ATX-sized power supply in a mini ITX case, up-to-date I/O, high-quality materials, built-in RGB, and 2 included good fans. That was a first. On the could have been better side, I have a few very minor things. There should be a 2-to-1 PWM splitter added to the front fans. There is just no need to use separate headers for both the fans, especially because you have a mini ITX motherboard in here. Then I think it would be great if they added some kind of cover behind the power supply to just hide where the cables come out. It's sad, especially if you don't have braided cables or even modular power supplies. This could benefit the aesthetic a bit. And as the last little issue, the cable cutouts around the main board, the one above the CPU and the one underneath the GPU, are not big enough for the 8-pin connectors of my power supply. Luckily, I can take them apart in 4-4, then they will go through, but combined as one 8-pin, it just doesn't work. I don't know why, but the cutout should be a millimeter bigger. And that's about it. Generally, I'm quite impressed with the case. It seems that Phanteks tried to position it somewhere slightly above the small form factor category, but without giving up even a tiny bit in cooling performance. And honestly, in my opinion, they pretty much nailed it. And on the price side, I think it's impressive too. You can get the P200A D-RGB for around 70 euros or $70 in the US, which, looking at the quality, feature set, versatility, and especially cooling performance, is a really affordable price. And because of all of that, I can totally recommend this case for anybody who's looking for a relatively small case with really big cooling potential. Just be prepared for the cable management, it won't be easy. Okay, so this should be about it. I would like to take this moment to thank Case King for providing us this pretty amazing case. And of course, I will leave their links and Amazon links and manufacturer links and whatnot down in the description below. Okay, then see you in the next one. Bye bye.